Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to the people all across the world, welcome to the You Want to Be Real podcast. I am your host, a man originally known by a ruler Shaboom. Who do I have here with me today? I got Butch, I got Champion Mode, I got Kai, and this is the You Want to Be Real podcast. Now, before we get started, gentlemen, I'd like to ask you guys a question, and I'm going to try to phrase this the best I can phrase this. I'll even answer it first. What's one thing that life convinced you of that you wish you never believed? And I would say for me, one thing that life convinced me of that I wish I never believed was I had to have everything figured out in a certain time. Because I never feel like it is a time to know everything. I feel like in life you got seasons and you got different lessons a part of them. And sometimes, when you growing up trying to figure out who you are, you have no clue into the person that you are going to become. You have an idea, you have a destination that you're trying to get to, but then sometimes you get disappointed when you feel like you don't get there quick enough. So I feel like life can put a lot of pressure on you and you can put a lot of pressure on yourself by believing that you need to be at a certain place at a certain time. And the one thing I say about it is you will always, is one thing my grandma told me, is sometimes you're not where you want to be, but you're right where you're supposed to be. So long as you can keep that positive mind frame, then you can keep moving forward. Don't let anything stop you. So, Champion Mode, I'll ask you one thing life convinced you of and you believed it.
Um, I'm not sure if I understand the question fully, but I'll try to answer it the best way possible. But one thing, um, I'll say this: my struggle throughout my life has been, now that I'm married with a family, um, the need for people, the need for fellowship with my fellow brother. Growing up, I grew up kind of like isolated, like towards though. Well, let me put it like this: I wasn't taught to serve more so because the way I grew up was more selfish. So I grew up convinced that I didn't need no one and I can do life by my lonesome. So when certain relationships came into my life that I really need, that are vital to my existence, right? I didn't know how to deal with those relationships because of my survival mode of on how I grew up. So if that answers your question, in one way, life had convinced me that I didn't need nobody and it's better off to go through life that way, you know. And I didn't understand going into not just my marriage, but it's a lot of relationships. I went in with a certain perspective to where as though that's not how relationships work. So
Quick question
yeah,
though, Champion Mode, because I want to get to the other two brothers that we have on the show. What changed that?
I'll say the biggest. I'll say relationships, my marriage, my daughter, but even previous relationships, just relationships, man. Like even my relationships with my homies, like, I understand inner circle, outer circle, and then I got a circle of guys that um they know me. They know me. You know what I mean? And I can call them for advice, life advice. You know what I mean? And it ain't gonna be yes man, yes man. We're gonna go through the storm together, vice versa. You know what I mean? So those relationships, they take work, they take effort, all of them. Not just your marriage, not just your relationship. Those are the most important ones, your marriage and the one with your daughter. But um, you need relationships, man. You need relationships. I learned you need relationships. You don't want to be alone. You do not want to be alone. I have a lot of examples of people who are alone, even guys alone with money. You don't want to be alone, man. It's
All right,
lonely.
so Kai, I'm gonna try to come to you on this one, and I'm gonna try to make the question as put it in layman's terms as much as possible because I understand it is a little confusing. Shit, me answering it, I know what I mean, but the way I have to articulate it is something different. So you know how life tells us and teaches us that we need to be certain things to be accepted and be approved of by society. What's one thing that life convinced you that you needed to be, in order to be somebody in the society that you listen to and you wish you did not believe?
I really like the angle that you had, that you started out with, AG. Just feel like feeling like you should have mastered everything already. And I heard it in a brotherhood group that I attended. They created an acronym for it called shame, right? Because we was feeling all these different feelings as men, and it was shame. Should have mastered everything. Should have already mastered everything. There it is. And when you began to speak about that, man, it took me back to that group, but it also took me to myself, because that's where I would say I'm still dealing with that currently. And I've also dealt with that, I know, full fledged, full throttle all my life. Like I feel like I should have been a respected musician already, or I feel like I should have been a speaker already, or I feel like I should have been uh, completely financially stable already, or I feel like I should be a better father to my child already. Like we feel like we as men, especially I feel like as men, we feel like we should have everything together right then and there, the moment we conceive the idea or the moment the situation arises. And that's like you said, bro, that's never the case. The thing is, man, we're on this journey, we're on this road, and the only thing we could do is just prepare ourselves along the way. If we want to do this or if we want to have that, all we can do is to prepare ourselves to put ourselves in position. But we can't have everything. We can't already have everything mastered. It's just not that simple.
To piggyback off something you said, brother, because we share the same sentiment. Let me ask you a question. How are you dealing with being patient and being patient positively, waiting for things to happen for you?
Yeah, I'm just working, man. I'm just working the faith, right? I got faith that these things is going to work out because I'm working them. Like as long as I'm working them, they're going to work out. I don't believe that there's any work that goes unvoided, like that doesn't work out for you. It's either working on you or it's working for you, but it's never working against you.
Appreciate that, good brother. All right, to the good brother, my sensei at the gym, for a lot of people who don't know, which taught me how to do the Liu Kang kick. And
Oh,
if anybody need their ass whipped, you just come my way. Um, so I'm working on getting my double black belt right now. But said in order for one to be one with their self, they must be in tune with the sun. And I'm still trying to understand what you meant by that, Butch. But I'll figure it out one day, and that's when I could graduate the class and everything. But Butch, I'll ask you, as far as something that life, the way we was brought up, the things we were taught to believe, and everything like that. Something that life has taught you or told you that you needed to be, and you believed it, and you wish you didn't. What is something, Butch?
Well, I changed my location. Obviously, I was downstairs. I thought maybe my reception was bad. Am I coming across okay? Okay, cool. All right. But I sit in a particular location whenever I do podcasts because I always like the same kind of altar behind me. And one of the things that sits behind me is the album by Stevie Wonder, which came out in 77, 76, 77. It's called Songs in the Key of Life. And my favorite song on that album goes to What Your Grandmother Said. And I remember exactly how she put it. But he has a line in the song As, where he says, "We all know sometimes life's hates and troubles can make us wish you were born in another time and space. But you can bet your life in that and twice as double that God knew exactly where he wanted you to be placed." And I think about that constantly as it relates to what I hear some of you talking about. I think all of you may have said this, that we expect and hope that by a certain time we would have achieved certain things in life. We'd be set. And that's just not the way it goes. That's not, as much, no matter how hard we try, I think life always has some surprise for us that we cannot see coming. And it only makes sense. But I want to get directly to the answer of the question that you asked, because right away, I was fooled into thinking that everybody was basically good. I no longer believe that. I no longer believe it. I no longer believe that people are salvageable and that everybody deserves my time and that everybody has good intentions and everybody has a good heart. I don't believe that anymore. And I was brought up at first in the Baptist church. and I was brought up. I almost became a Catholic priest when I was in high school. I went through a school that was designed for young men interested in the priesthood. And there were a lot of things that we were taught that were contradictions around how you deal with difficult people. And there are some people that I think you just need to avoid, people who are extremely dangerous. And I wish I had never been taught that. I wish I had never been taught, that I need to be kind to everybody, that everybody is nice, that everybody deserves a second chance. I wish I would have never been taught that because it's not true. And I think sometimes when we give too much of ourselves to people, we can lose a whole lot. So that's something that I would never teach my children, that everybody in the world is a good person, because it's just not true.
But it's to piggyback off something you said, right? When you say everybody can't be salvaged and everything like that, and some people is they're just bad apples. That's just what they are.
Yep.
Is there certain particular traits that these people share that when you could come in contact with them, you can be able to spot it and say, "Nah, I'm gonna stay away from that person."
Yeah, it takes a little bit of time, but I think this is where patience in relationships becomes very important. They don't give anything. They are constantly taking, and there's no reciprocity. Reciprocity is a big word for me. Give and take creates balance. And when you pay attention to how these people are, you will see that they do a lot of taking and they don't give a whole lot. Or they might do what's called breadcrumbing you. They might give you a little bit just to kind of keep you hanging on. And this goes into all relationships, whether they be platonic or romantic. They breadcrumb you. They'll give you something just to keep you hanging on, but they're never really risking as much as you are. A good friend of mine once said that he will never be in a relationship with someone who does not risk as much as he risks. And so that's one way of recognizing these people, is that they are takers and they don't give a whole lot back in return.
Appreciate that. So we'll get into our first topic, and our first topic stems from the word addiction, right? And a lot of people have addiction to something in life. I have a personal theory that says the majority of people that you will come in contact with is addicted to one of these three things: sex, drugs, or drama. And I feel like a lot of time we've been indoctrinated to grow up and believe things like that, or it's been the propaganda to push that into society. And I feel like, me, myself personally, I struggle from, I can say that the sex category because, as far as, liking to fornicate or just as far as watching the corn, I can't say the P word, so I'm going to say the corn. And it fucked me up, man. Like, I'm not even going to lie. I can remember days sometimes where I wouldn't even come outside. Like I would stay in the house. Like I'd be on my way to go get some yams, and it's like I already handled my business, and it made me sometimes socially awkward when it came to dealing with women because I only looked at them as an object and not actually as a human being. And I think that when we suffer from that type of addiction, that a lot of us men, and I'm not going to speak on behalf of women, but a lot of us men, we don't know how to communicate and we don't know the value of what the opposite sex brings to us because they will forever be looked at as something that we could just use as pleasure. So I feel like even that being the case, sometimes I would have to get certain things done and I wouldn't have enough strength or I wouldn't have enough energy because I just got done watching 2, 3 videos of corn. And it took me down a rabbit hole to where I realized one day, and I thought for all my life, I thought I could quit this shit. Until I realized one day, if I could quit it, why haven't I already done? Because I know it's destroying everything around me, even destroying my growth. And me and Champion Mo had a conversation the other day, and he has a very interesting take on addiction. So, Champion Mo, I give you the floor to be able to just elaborate and articulate how you feel.
Um, I mean, this is a personal theory. I've been doing a lot of work. Um, I've been down that rabbit hole. We grew up in a culture. A lot of people just say it's black culture that treats women a certain way, but it's American culture. It's a man culture, to be honest. Hip hop does do what they do. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I can go to a drag race. I can go to the Daytona 500, whatever. You got cheerleaders, sex sells, right? We know that history, all that. But um, my theory is this: a lot of men walking around. I'm not going to say all, but there is a high percentage of men walking around that are addicted to either pornography, sex, some type of lust factor, right? Some type of lust factor and it has to do with sexual. And what I realize is it holds us back from really achieving who we truly are meant to be, right? So there's a science on it to where as though a lot of us get into corn early on in life, right? We get into this lifestyle early in life, right? And our brain never really develops. It actually stunts our brain. It stunts our brain. It stunts us emotionally, not just sexually. It stunts us emotionally. It stunts us socially. It messes with us on all parts of our life. This thing is messing us up, right? But here's the crazy part. I don't know a lot of grown men that were even knowledgeable of this very thing growing up. I didn't start hearing this stuff until I started paying for therapy. And then all of the I'll say this, I would hear the Bible verses about sex. And there's so many, and I believe a lot of those verses, that's a whole nother conversation, but it blows my mind because a lot of those verses, the science actually backs what that's saying in a sense, right? So destroying yourself when you the sexual impurity, when you're divulging in it, when you're giving it to yourself, right? Giving yourself to it, scientifically you're brain damaging yourself. You're destroying your brain. The dopamine, your dopamine dependency, and there's lots of dopamine dependencies, but this pornography one is the biggest one for stress relief, is why we depend on it as men. Pornography, I'll say. It's why we depend on it as a stress relief as men. We run to it because it actually helps relieve the stress. And a lot of men run around with anxiety, stress. They don't like to talk about their emotions. There's so much things going on in their lives. A lot of husbands, the pressure of, the pressure that marriage brings, the pressure of being a father, all those things. And a lot of times, once that we're talking about, men don't like to communicate, right? So we fall back into that loop of, oh, I'm going to run to my vice. I'm going to run to my vice. I'm going to run to this super high stimulant that releases just these huge amounts of dopamine to get rid of my stressors. Only when I'm done to feel like I just went on a drug binge. Back in the day, they used to go on 2-week drug binges or something like that. That's how you will feel, like you're coming down off a high. You know what I mean? So I know everything I just said is scattered because I have a bunch of scattered notes when talking about this particular subject, but I think pornography, you know how they say the gateway drug is marijuana? I think corn is. I think growing up as a teen or as a youth, if you get tangled up in that, man, I think it's a gateway drug to everything else. Whether it's substance abuse, whether it's physical sexual abuse, like you're going out here selling your body or uncontrollably doing things. I think corn is like the pivotal catalyst for all those things and trauma and all that stuff. But yeah, so I know I was
All
long
right.
winded.
So, Butch, I'm gonna throw this question to you, Butch. Was there any point in your life where there was addiction that you battled with that you realized was taking over your life in such a negative way to the point where you realized it may destroy you?
I think my addiction was more toward an obsession that I had with revenge. And that might sound like a strange addiction to some, but I think that I think most of you all know my father killed my mother when I was young, right? And to be present, to see something like that is it's just crazy. I mean, I know people who've seen friends shot in the street. I know people who've seen strangers shot in the street. I don't know a lot of people, thank God, who listen to their father shoot their mother and then open up a door and find their mother laying in the floor with a big ass hole in the side of her head. I don't know many people like that. And the other album that's part of my altar, so I got Stevie Wonder on one side, on the other side I got Marvin Gaye. And Marvin Gaye was important to me as a child because I was listening to Marvin Gaye the night that my father shot my mother. His album is called I Want You. And so I keep those two albums always somewhere near me. And Marvin Gaye is important to me because Marvin Gaye talked about two things. Marvin Gaye had one song that was called Let's Get It On, and it was about sex. And then he had another song called What's Going On, and it was about social revolution. But both of those songs were asking two different questions about the same reality. And as a young man, listening to my mother and father fucking fight within the same hour was just kind of crazy to me. And then to see my father overwhelm my mother physically was a struggle for me. I grew up on Playboy books. I just had this conversation the other day. I grew up on Playboy books. My dad kept them in between his mattress, and me and my brother always knew as soon as my father left the house, me and my brother was going straight to the mattress. And we pull up the mattress and pull up the books. But what was interesting is that next to the Playboy books were his guns. He had a sawed-off shotgun and he had a revolver. So think about it from this standpoint that you got uh, a bunch of coochie on this side of the mattress and some guns over here. Now, for those of you, I don't know if John, if we ever talked about Frances Cress Welsing when we were at Youth Build, but Frances Cress Welsing wrote a book called The ISIS Papers. And in it, she talks about guns and how guns are the symbolic representation of the penis. That if you look at a gun sideways, that the barrel is the shaft, the trigger is the scrotum, and then you've got the handle which goes inside the body. And so when I wasn't thinking like this, of course, as a young man, but as I got older and I started to see how the guns pointing at the Playboy books was something offensive in many ways. That the guns would actually be in there was offensive, but at the same time, it kind of made sense that if the gun was the penis and the Playboy books had the coochie in there, then it made sense that they were together. But when you contaminate that relationship, you got a problem. If the guns were used to protect protect us from people on the outside, we'd be in one situation, but they weren't. So anyway, I became very angry after my father killed my mother. And I, for 30 years, constantly thought about killing him. And sex to me has never been an obsession because I've always had easy access to it. And I've actually worked in sex communities where I've seen women who were far more sexually aggressive than men. And I think that the media has done men a terrible disservice by showing men to be sexual predators. And I'm telling you, my brothers, I've seen women who are crazy. Given an opportunity, given access, women can be far worse than men when it comes to their sexual appetite. So, in all that being said, yeah, man, anger was my choice of obsession. It was my choice of addiction, and I was happy to be addicted to anger.
Appreciate that, Butch. For being so vulnerable and candid and everything like that. I was just privy to that news when you just said it.
I didn't
Um,
never told you that.
no.
Oh,
So
okay.
I mean, listen, well, it's just it's the time right now, and I want to actually double back on that. But I actually want to get Kai a chance to get in here and talk about something that may have been a struggle with him in his life. So Kai, was there any addiction that you faced that you realized you had to get a hold of it?
Yeah, brother. I didn't even acknowledge it as that until I got older and got into the work that I'm pursuing in my early 30s now. I was sexually abused from the moment I could like remember being conscious in life. So that's to tell you how young I was, right? And scornography was introduced not too long after that. I've had some experiences very young with a girl across the street when I was really young. Like after the essay, after the scornography, then the girl, then just like life just took off after that. And it's just been like sex, drugs, drama, sex, drugs, drama, sex, drugs, drama. I ended up being homeless, sex, drugs, drama, sex, drugs, drama. And it wasn't until I had my daughter and I was just like, yo, I got to be somebody for this person to become somebody. And I began doing a lot of personal work. And that's when I really realized the things the trauma or the sex, drugs, drama, no matter which order, the fact that I've dealt with those things for 25, close to 30 years, uninterrupted or like unchallenged, and recognizing like, yo, this is what's really been like holding you down, chain and ball, like millstone around his neck, throw him in a river, he's done. Like, yo, bro, like, so like it's like a combination of all three, man, because I wasn't privy to him at all. It just was like, okay, this is just what happens. Like I was born into this. Like, okay, this is just what happens. Like, cool. Um, and I just lived my life accordingly, the way that every black man lived his life. I kept quiet. I was angry, but I still just like had this sense of pride that I had to keep up. So it was like, I'm homeless now. I'm in the streets. I'm dealing, whatever the case may be. I got to do what I got to do. Like, I'm not worried about nothing. And now I got a daughter and I got to be somebody in order for her to become somebody. And I don't know how to do any of that. And I'm just like, dang, this is really going to be something. Like, this is the challenge here. So, I wanted to keep mine brief, but also be vulnerable and share some things, man, because I dealt with all three on a significant level. Um, yeah, man, it's a those addictions, man, is uh, powerful. Isn't even a word. Like they're like life consuming. Like they really consume your life, and if you don't like acknowledge them, because like I said, I didn't even acknowledge them, accept them until I was like 30, 32. That's when I had my baby. I had my baby when I was 30. Um, I just started to recognize like it consumed my life. But now when I look at TV and all that, I'm just looking at look at everybody's posting, right? They're talking about one or the other, power this or give me head this or something. So it's like we don't even recognize like it's consuming our lives. Like I'm looking at my brothers and I'm looking at my sisters and I'm like, this is what we posting, this is what we're talking, this is what we're practicing, this is our life we talking about. And it's and you summarized it in three categories, right? You said sex, drama, and drugs. Like it's like, dang, bro, like that's the entire community. That's all our brothers and sisters in those three boxes right there. And I didn't recognize it until I was 30. So I can't imagine how many of my brothers and sisters is in the same boat as me or somewhere similar. You feel what I'm saying? So yeah, man, I dealt with all three on a significant level.
Well, once again, brother, I appreciate you for being candid and vulnerable and transparent as well. Um, to move on to our next topic. Uh,
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
Um, Malachi, man, it's deep that this conversation is going this way. I've been doing studies just dealing with my own traumas and the things that I've been through, right? Um, you said you didn't acknowledge it until your daughter was born. A lot of times we don't even know that what we're dealing with is wrong because it's so normalized. It's normalized dysfunction. That's literally what it is. You see what
Right.
I'm saying? And culturally, you know, it could be going on. Chaos can be going on in this home, and right next door they got just as much chaos. Across the street they got just as much chaos. This is our community, right? Another
Yeah.
thing, patterns of learned behavior. So visually, what you're seeing, what your parents are doing, with your environment. You know, the number one thing that influences human behavior is their environment, their patterns of learned behavior. So it's just deep, man. And then we grow into these grown men, um, who are supposed to lead, who are supposed to protect, who are supposed to provide, who are supposed to be innovative and being, there's a structure to manhood, but it's like, damn, can we adapt so we can adapt to situations to do it better? You know what I mean? Um, you're going through all these things and then you become a grown man and now you got to learn to deal with your emotions properly. You know what I mean? But meanwhile, you don't even know you're in this normalized cycle of dysfunction. You know what I mean? And so the cycle continues. You go, you have children, you don't raise them properly, you don't teach them how to be functioning members in society because
Absolutely.
you yourself don't even know how to be a functioning member in society. You know what I mean? Nah, it's deep, bro. It's deep. Like,
Yeah, bro. Like I'm literally on the same path as you right now, like studying everything that happened to me and just saying like, all right, I gotta address these, and then like be vulnerable and expressive with my daughter, but then do the same thing with all the brothers that I come into community with, that I come into contact with, that I come into communication with. Because like, yeah, I might not be able to help you with anything, but my vulnerability may be some courage that you need, bro. And I'm shaking just talking about it. I never not shake when I talk about what happened to me as a kid. Like to say like, yo, for me to speak something like that to anybody is like, I'm what part of me feel like you're taking a risk, but it's like, nah, bro, like somebody need to hear this somewhere because they need to understand that they're not on isolation island. That's what I call it. They're not on isolation island by themselves. They sitting on that tree thinking, oh man, I'm by myself here. No, bro, I'm on that same tree, but I'm behind you on that same tree. Or somebody up there in the leaves, bro. We not alone in this, bro. Like we gotta talk, we gotta come together. Everything that you just said, champ, how we supposed to be leaders, innovative, protectors, providers, provisionary, and we don't get introduced to none of that at any stage of our life. So we have to somehow galvanize ourselves and galvanize the troops, bro, and just be like, yo, this is how we got to do it. We got to create some type of roadmap, some type of blueprint to get it done.
So that is a lot of information, and Champion Mode actually took some things that I planned on saying myself as far as when we go from boys to men, and I ain't talking about the rap group, no pun intended. We don't even know how to be that because a lot of times we have nobody as a male figure who is a male figure that we need to look up to around us. And even if we do have somebody like that, it's like we're not even trained and programmed to even look at that type of person to be the type of person that we should just grow up and be. And I think that a lot of times in society, you know, we don't have a safe haven as men. We don't have a place where we can go and have a deep conversation and not be judged. Because the one thing about a person, when they want to express their emotions to you, they don't want you to look at them with a judgmental eye or even some type of negative comment to say back to them. Because we all battle things that internally that we are ashamed of. And I think that the one thing about it is, as men, and especially as black men in society in America, we got to be honest. We feel like nobody understands us. It's not one race of man on this earth who can say that they understand the black man's plight. The black man in America might be the most attacked man overall. And then when you sit back and you think about the other races don't like us. And it boils down to sometimes the race that we are don't even like us either. And we feel like we have no outlet. We feel like we have nobody to go to. And the funny thing about life is, right, because I want to get on the topic of mental health. Um, the one thing about me is what a lot of people don't know is I joke, I smile a lot. I don't take things too seriously. It's because I understand and I care and I'm compassionate and I love hard. So a lot of things that affects me that I know will affect me, I try to avoid. And the reason why I try to avoid it is because I'm afraid of getting hurt. I'm afraid of being on the other end of the spectrum where I can't control how I react. I can't control what I do. So with my emotions being like that and everything, I don't process and deal with the things I've been through completely. So what I do a lot of time is I try to act like they didn't exist. Like I'm horrible with death. Like if somebody goes around me, or even if one of my aunts is in the hospital or my cousins or anything, that I can't even watch the news because I'm so fucked up mentally. I cannot see bad news because it infiltrates my head and it fucks with me to the point where I'm looking at it like that will influence my day. So I just act like certain things don't exist. I crack a joke and I move forward in life about it. And the thing is, I never really actually sit down and get a chance to process it. It's like I tell people all the time, right? I say it's a difference between healing and accepting what happened and moving forward. And the difference is, let's just say you're a tennis player and you sprain your ankle, but you got a match next week. You sprained your ankle. The difference between healing and accepting what happened and moving forward is when you go out there to play that game, you're going to have in the back of your mind where your ankle hold up because you did not give it the proper time to heal. When your ankle is fully healed, you're not even worried about it because that's not something that's previously on your mind because that's in the past and you already took care of that. And a lot of times people still make decisions based off the things they've been through because they have not got over it. So that's why a lot of times people present is dictated by people past. And that's just my personal opinion, but Champion More, let me get to you, man. And I'm gonna ask you a question. Mental health. Why as a black man? Why as a man overall? Why as a man overall? Then I get a little deeper. As a man overall, why is it so hard for us to admit that we have emotions?
Um, Sometimes it can be pride and ego. A lot of times we're not taught. Um, a lot of times men aren't properly taught to deal with their emotions properly. You know, that's one thing. Another reason is there's this standard to manhood. It don't matter your culture. There's this standard to manhood towards though this machoism. Don't get me wrong. Masculinity is a good thing. We need masculinity, right? But there's a standard that most men can't even live up to that we put in place. It's kind of like with women and their beauty standard, right? They'll tell us that it's us that's doing that, but that's a standard they put in place towards though the standard for us in traditional manhood is big boys don't cry. We don't cry. So expressing yourself is like expressing your emotions is hard for a lot of men, right? If you don't express it, you hold it in and it's going to come out in some toxic way. And that's why the suicide rate is up. That's why men murder and commit the crimes they commit. You know what I mean? The sexual stuff and all of that stuff because men are, or go and destroy their families, go cheat on them, on their wives, or do horrific things, right? Because of mental health, because of not expressing your emotions. Human 101, human psychology 101, right? And I learned this from a therapist, psychotherapist. Whereas though he said humans, when they hold things in and there's a like anxiety, stress, trauma, and all of that stuff, it's going to come out in some way. And when you're holding all that negative stuff in, that negative emotion in, it's going to come out in a very toxic way. You know what I mean? And that's for men and women. But men, being who we are and how we're biologically set up, you know, the what's the word when you throw a grenade and there's people who are innocent that get hit? Collateral damage, right? The collateral damage of that man and his emotions sometimes can be the people that he loves. You know what I mean? So, in my opinion, that's why we need the mental health. That's why mental health is important. And then when you add the factor of like black men, you know, or there's added layers to the mental health. You know what I mean? Just being a man in general is one thing, but then you add the dichotomy of race to it, it turns into something else. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Let me ask you a question, Champion Mo. How is your mental health?
Um, I mean, I think it's pretty good. I think it's pretty good. Not me personally. I've been getting a collect. So here's the thing. So what we were talking about earlier when we were talking about corn, that totally that totally makes the struggle of mental health and clarity of life so blurred and so distracted. You know, when you're addicted to sex and pornography and that particular life, just that particular lifestyle alone, you don't necessarily have to be an alcoholic or a drug addict, right? That's your vice. And to what Butch was saying, I can agree to that, but I know our biology as men, it's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy, man. You know what I mean? I'm not saying one is better than the other. It's human behavior, but from the gender perspective of being a male, um, it's just a lot of damage being done, man.
I got you. Kai, I'm coming to you. Mental health. How important is it for you? How is it, and at what point in your life did you realize that it was something that you may have neglected? And I know you talked about being sexually abused when you were younger and everything, but at what age do you think that you realized that, man, this is an issue that I need to realize I
Yeah,
need to
no
get
doubt,
attacked?
no doubt. Everything just came crashing down at 30 when I had my daughter, bro. Like I was just out here living and ignoring life. Like I had some good people in my life that was trying to advise me, but I was just out here living. Like Um, it wasn't until I had my baby girl, it wasn't until I really started being like, dang, I ain't have a dad. My mom wasn't really a mom. My grandmom, she was there, but she was working 3 jobs. So who was there to really pour into me, to take care of me, besides keep a roof over my head, give me some clothes, give me something to eat. Um, so I had my baby girl, and I'm just like, yo, I gotta be somebody because she gotta become somebody. And I'm recognizing like, what is up here that I can give her? Nothing. I had to be real with myself, bro. There's nothing up here that I can give her. So how is she gonna go out here and be somebody? And we know the type of girls that's out here. We might have even dealt with some of those type of girls that was out here. It scares me to death to think like, yo, bro, if you don't do nothing about yourself, your little baby girl's gonna grow up and become one of them girls, bro. So it's like, what are you gonna do about yourself at the end of the day, man? So mental health at that point, I heard the term mental health and all that when I was growing up and going through high school and all that. But I was ignoring all that because I felt like nothing could help what I was going through. Like that's that isolation island thing. And I feel like a lot of black men feel like that. They feel like can't nothing help them. They feel like that what they've gone through, nobody else on the face of earth has ever gone through or experienced it to the degree that they experienced it to. And if it's not to the degree, you still need to tell somebody. You still need to let somebody know what's up. You still need to express yourself to somebody. Um, because I wanted to kind of go on the mental health aspect and talk about that emotional piece that you was talking about as well, man, because that's really important too. Um, we just feel like that we can't show no emotion, that we got to be hard as nails, we got to be hard as rocks, that we can't divulge anything because it's a sign of weakness. We can't be vulnerable because it is big, like he said, big boys don't cry. And for us to think about this, you it's not like you can be born without emotions, so we're neglecting a natural function. Like that makes no sense. You can't be born without emotions, so therefore we're neglecting a natural function. So to have a whole community pretty much praise this going against a natural function, or to like push this thing in our face, and then for us to align with it and then try to live like this, is destroying ourselves automatically, bro. Like, and I'm I won't. I stopped being hard on myself about accepting that once I came to that conclusion. Um, but I always encourage my brothers around me, like, bro, even if you just gotta talk to me and you think you burning me out, don't worry about that, bro, because you need somebody to talk to, bro. Like, just holler at me, bro. Like I'll listen, bro. Even if I don't have the time right then and there, if I'm on a call, meeting, or whatever the case may be, let me know you need to talk. Just know I'm gonna get back to you. So back to the mental piece. Um, I think on the same wave, man, that we feel like we don't have anybody that could a companionship mentally that could really get with us mentally, to feel like, dang, this person understand me or can rock with me, man. And I just I know that to not be true. And I really wish that we as brothers, and I start with myself because it's a challenge, bro, to develop the mental fortitude to keep going, to really trust and believe that you're going to run into a brother that really genuinely, authentically, sincerely care about what you have to say, and that's really just going to shut the F up and listen to you. And with
Okay,
that,
I'm gonna
I'm
ask you the same question. I
what's up?
asked Champion Mood.
Yeah.
How is your mental health right now?
It's two ways I'm gonna put it. It's a work in progress and it's on the up and up. Because I was at a speaking engagement and I said I'm a work in progress. They said, "How you doing, Malika?" I said, "I'm a work in progress," and they frowned their face up almost. And I said, "Do you not? There's two benefits. It's two pluses in what I just said. Working, which means you working is work, and progress. But my mental health is on the up and up, brother, and it's always a work in progress because I know there's always room to grow, and I know growth is really in what we're doing right here, sharing, bro.
So, Butch, thank you for
Welcome
rejoining
back.
us. We touched a little bit on the mental health aspect, but now that you're here, Butch, we're going to continue this. You spoke about your father killing your mother, and that was something that's news to me. And you spoke about your brother and everything like that. Like, how did he deal with that throughout the years?
It's kind of hard to say, man. And again, I hope I'm coming across. I had an opportunity to hear everything you all were saying, but for some reason, I just could not reconnect. But I heard everything that was going on, and I appreciate everything that was said. Um, I think one of the casualties of my father's action was my relationship with my brother. Over the years, we really grew apart, and not necessarily in an antagonistic kind of way. I wound up moving away from Chicago, which is where I'm originally from. I moved away from Chicago in 1990 when I joined the Navy, which is how I wound up in this area. And we have very different perspectives on what happened. And I mean, philosophically, spiritually, mentally, we have very different perspectives. I was named after my father. And so I took that very hard because you've heard people say things like the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And I think one of the things that bothered me was, and I think somebody may have even said it in this conversation, you grow up and you live what you've learned. And to me, that never sat well with me. It was almost like some prophecy. Like at some point I was going to snap and I was going to hurt somebody. And that shit always bothered me. It was just like I got to live with the idea that I'm going to be out of control at some point in my life and I'm going to do something that I don't want to do. And so that anger that I talked about earlier was very real for me because I was always vigilant against myself. I was always doubting myself. I was always concerned about whether or not there was something in me that I didn't know was going to come out. And all that for me went back to what my father did. And so a lot of times I felt myself living in the past, which compromised my mental health. And like I said, it compromised my relationship with my brother because he and I had a different take on what happened and why it happened and how we were going to respond to it. My response to it was stalking my father whenever I was in Chicago. My response was coming to the conclusion that at some point I was going to have to kill him. I lived for a very long time believing that I was just going to have to kill him, that was part of this theater. My father killed my mother, so I got to turn around and I got to revenge my mother or avenge my mother. So, and my mental health was greatly compromised. John, I met you in 2006. You said around then. Yeah, it was 2010. So 4 years after I met John, I'm going back to Chicago because I wanted to find the court documents. I was the chief witness against my father at the age of 12. And so I had to sit on the stand and testify against my father. And so when I went back in 2010, it was 4 years after meeting John, I was still fucked up. And so when I think about my interactions with someone like John and how fragile I was, no matter how strong I might have appeared, I was quite fragile fragile enough to still feel like I needed to kill my father. And so I'm happy to say today that, like Malachi, I'm all right with being a work in progress because there's always room for growth, always room for growth. And at the same time, um, I am happy with where I am. I've come a long way in this life, and sometimes I can be really tough on myself. But uh, if I can be part of lives like I have been to the three of you all, I'm like, I'm talking to three incredible men right now. I must have done something right to be here in this conversation with the three of you all. So I got to give myself some grace. And I believe I know I'm gonna be all right. I'm ready for the next battle, whatever that next battle is. I'm ready for it.
So I'm gonna ask you right now, Butch, the same question I ask everybody else. How is your mental health right now?
Good, man. You know you and I don't see each other as much as we like to, but we see each other frequently enough, and that's in the gym. And you and I show up there because it's our safe haven. And I try to get there once, sometimes twice a day. And when I'm not there, I'm focused on the stories that I believe have been gifted to me through the relationships that I've developed with people like Malachi. Um, I believe that I have a purpose in this life. And I think part of having strong mental health is believing in your purpose, believing that you are not an accident. I think when you think you're an accident, and when you think that all you're ever going to do is make mistakes, it's hard for you to have strong mental health. I don't believe that about myself. I believe that I was put here for a reason. I believe I'm going to accomplish certain things. And I know now it's going to be tough. So, in spite of how tough it is, as long as I believe that I am supposed to be here and do some great stuff, I'm gonna be fine. It's gonna be a struggle sometimes, but I'm gonna be fine because I'm always be back on course, and I'm always have you all to turn to when things get tough.
Butch, I want to ask you a question, right? And I want to bounce this to everybody after I ask Butch. I kind of asked Kai this and everything like that, right? But I want to, as a man, I'm afraid to cry in front of a woman
Mm,
because I'm not strong enough to think that she'll still look at me
mm,
the same way.
mm,
Um, as a black man growing up in the hood,
mm-hmm,
I'm afraid to show a level of compassion to other black men because I'm afraid that they'll take advantage of it and look at it as a weakness.
mm,
As just a man overall, sometimes I don't know what a man is supposed to be because I come from so many different it's so many different angles. Like I have a good sense of the man that I want to be,
right.
and I have a good sense of the man that I am now. But at sometimes they come into a conundrum
Mm-hmm,
because the man I want to be and the man that I am now, it's just like it's something blocking it. And mentally, I'm trying to figure out what the fuck it is. And I want to ask you, Butch, because you said something, I'm going to ask everybody else too. But I specifically want to ask this question for you. How do I let the idea of myself go of the thing I want to be or the thing I used to be? Because I feel like a lot of men struggle with the men that they was and try to move forward in life, and they can't get past the past, if
mm-hmm,
I should put it like that.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
How do I let certain things go and turn into the person that God has called me to be?
mm-hmm,
Like, how can I break that cycle? How can I break that chain?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You started off by talking about not crying in front of women, and there's some women that I know I can cry in front of, and they are more like sisters than anything. And so, for some women, I got no problem crying. They're used to me crying. For other women, depending on my relationship with them, I'm not going to because I hate to put it this way, but they don't deserve my tears, and they haven't earned my tears. And so they wouldn't understand crying is a form of communication, and they wouldn't understand that form of communication from me. So I'm not going to try to communicate my tears with them. And that's nothing against them. Again, it's just that they wouldn't understand that language of mine. So I'm not going to speak that language to them. Um, Closing the gap is what I hear you talking about, brother. You talking about how do you close the gap between uh, where you are, where you've been, and where you want to go. And certainly, it's a daily process. It's been a daily process for me of closing that gap. I have, there are times when I've really struggled with the idea of who I want to be. And I, I try to keep a picture of myself in mind. And I just keep working toward that picture. Sometimes I make notes about who it is I want to be, but I'm always drawn toward that thing. And the other part of it is something Malcolm X used to always say. He would say, for the most part, fake it until you make it. And so I think that's a big part of it as well. You are the person you want to be. You have to step into it. You're already that person. It's a matter of time. But to to embrace that you are that person, I think it's okay to do at any point in your life. You already are that person because you're the one holding that image in your mind and in your heart. So that's like, that's yours already. So I think it's a matter of claiming it and then walking in those steps.
I appreciate that them words of encouragement, Butch. I really do. Champion mode, I'm gonna come to you and I'm gonna ask you a question, right? 'Cause I see you had time to sit there and write a couple things down and probably some things that's on your mind and everything that you want to say. With you being a father and a husband, what's the biggest struggle that you face as far as keeping your mentality in check?
To be 100% honest, is my biggest struggle is dealing with me, my person, my emotions, my struggles. Not necessarily them. I love them both dearly, and I would do anything for them. So with that being said, it's more so a healing process within myself. Facing the monster within. Um, I would say that's my biggest struggle, battling the inner me. You know what I mean? Mastering who I am. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Um, you have no problem with being emotional and compassionate around your wife and child, right?
Um. Nah, I've been so. This is the joy of my marriage. One of the one of the one of the pluses about my marriage is I can be vulnerable with her. Me and her have a connection, and we can communicate about things that I know personally other couples probably couldn't. Right? My wife, I trust her. I trust her. You know what I mean? And I trust her that much that I can be vulnerable around her and she's not going to throw it up in my face or be like, "Oh, my husband cries. He's not masculine. That man over there is more masculine than my husband." Nah. Nah. It's a beautiful thing to be connected with her on that level towards though I can express my emotion. I mean, if I can't be safe and comfortable and vulnerable with her, why the heck I marry her? You know what I mean? I mean, I'm being real, so with that being said, yeah, but back to what I was saying, conquering the monster within, she's always been there wanting that from me. I wasn't always like that with her. I had to get comfortable within myself and figure out who I was. So, to speak on what you were saying about, I think it's about perception, and I've always cared about how I'm going to be perceived. It wasn't just it was just as of late to where as though I'm like, yo, they are the most important people in my life, my wife and my daughter, right? I got to get honest with myself and I got to get healthy so I can be there for them. I can be there for my little girl. I can be the husband my wife needs me to be. I can be the father my daughter needs me to be. But above all of that, I need to be the man that I need me to be so I can do that for them. I need to love myself enough, be what I need to be enough so I can be what they need me to be for them. You know what I mean? And that within itself, that has been my biggest challenge, to be honest.
Listen, I understand 100% because sometimes we could be the things in our life that hold us back from
Mm-hmm.
achieving greatness. And once you identify that you are the issue, then you have no other choice but to correct it. You know,
Yep.
you ask answers, you ask questions, you're gonna get answers.
Yeah.
Waiting for the good brother to hit the screen again because I want to go out on a positive note and also be able to give a little bit of inspiration and a little life for the viewers out there that's watching that may be battling certain things or going through certain things. Here we go. Butch, so I want to ask you two questions if you wouldn't mind indulging me for a quick second. Well, two favorites basically.
Absolutely.
Butch, if you one question I said and another favorite. Butch, if you can go back to the 16-year-old version of Butch,
Oof.
what would you say to him?
I would definitely say you're stronger than you think you are. I would definitely tell him that you are much stronger than you think you are, because the 16-year-old Butch was just 4 years off of losing his mother, and I had no idea what. I still had no idea what was going on. I guess I was a sophomore. I was probably either sophomore or junior in high school at 16, and 4 years shy of losing my mom. The way I lost my mother was, I don't know, man. I think I imagine I was probably still in a really blurry space, really uncertain about who I was and where I was going and what the world meant. And I'm sure I had times of extreme doubt and sadness, but I would tell them you're a lot stronger than you think you are. That's what I would tell them.
And Butch, if you wouldn't mind for the viewers out there and for the people who watching this, and they may not admit this in a public forum, but just for them to hear your word of advice, people out there who don't think they're good enough in life and don't think their life is worth anything, what encouragement would you give them?
I'd say again, man, what I said earlier around that whole Stevie Wonder quote. Uh, God put you here, and God thought you were good enough to bring you here. And if the Almighty believed that you were good enough to infuse you with life, I think people really got to think about that. And I know how hard it is, but if you are here in this moment, you've been given an awful lot of power. And I know circumstances can be tough, but I believe people are capable of far more than they could possibly know. And people got to call on some inner strength, come up with a purpose, come up with a direction, and seize the moment. Figure out what it is you're gonna do and seize the moment.
Kai, I want to come to you, Kai. Anybody who feels like they're not good enough, that feels like their life is not worth anything, what advice would you give to them?
Life always has a purpose, man. You were created with a purpose. It's a lot of inherited purposes. So, if, like, as a man, right, you were created to provide, you were created to protect, providing not just monetary, right? You can provide your presence. Um, there's a lot of inherited things that as men we provide. There's a lot of purposes that we live out as men just because we're men. They're just naturally in us. So I would say that, brother, you got a purpose. Sister, you have a purpose. Do not feel discouraged by your circumstance. Do not feel discouraged by your situation. It isn't a matter of discovering your purpose. It's a matter of just developing yourself for the purpose that you already have. It's inherited.
Champion mode, what advice would you give to somebody who doesn't feel like they even deserve to be here?
Man, I'm going to second what Butch said. You I mean, you're here. You're here. So you were chosen to be here out of a lot of, what is it, millions of swimmers. So you were chosen, man. You were chosen. That's the first and foremost thing. I will also tell them you have purpose. You have purpose. There is a purpose for you and why you're here. No one's created by mistake. I don't believe in that. I just don't. Um and you have purpose. You were meant to be here on purpose, and you have purpose and value within this life, regardless of those around you telling you you don't, regardless of your own mind and lack of self-worth telling you that you don't. But you do have value, you have purpose, even if you don't think you do. You have to have be willing to hold on, because there's always light at the end of the tunnel. It really is. Things can turn around within weeks, months, hours, days. It don't matter. It does turn around. Life comes in seasons. All of that cliche stuff that you hear, it's actually true. And it's very simplistic when it comes to life. Sometimes it can get complicated, but there is a simplistic part of life that it just that's what it is. It's simplistic. It's very simple. You know what I mean? But with that being said, I do want to say one other thing to what I was saying, just to end this. Accountability. Accountability on everybody's part, man. Like, I can speak about my marriage. My wife's accountability. It helps. It helps. I know a lot of people aren't blessed, and I don't hear a lot of people speak about their marriage or their relationships like that. But I can honestly say I've taken a lot. I've had a lot of value out of my marriage, man. A lot of life lessons, a lot of positive up things when it comes to marriage, because I know we hear a lot of negative things about relationships and marriage. So that's I'm gonna end it on that one with mine.
Hey, Butch, you want to say anything before we get up out of here?
I need to say something to John again because John, I met Malachi. I met Malachi last year, somewhere June of last year. I was doing a fatherhood program in Chester at Harris Casino, and he walked up to me afterward. And we had this conversation, and I try to write to the brother as often as I can. You know, I write to him and I let him know how much I love him. I write to him and I let him know how much I care, how much I believe in him. Um, and far be it for me to say this, John, but I'm like, damn, I actually had something to do with your education, man. I stood in front of you and talked to you. I mean, I'm looking at a dude who, if you didn't tell me who you were, I'd be impressed as hell with you. And then if you later told me, oh, by the way, you used to teach me, I'd be like, no, I didn't. No, I didn't. I'm just looking at you, man, and I'm like, what a man. What a voice. And I ain't seen you in a long time, man, but I am so honored to, and I'm about to cry just for the record. I'm gonna go ahead and start crying. Um, I'm honored, man, to be sitting here with you so many years later, listening to you talk like a grown ass man. That's it.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that, but that's similar to what you said to me 20 years ago. I'm telling you. No, I didn't
I
have.
got a good eye for talent.
Yeah, I'm just saying that's real. You know what I mean?
I
And
want to tell both. Go ahead. Go ahead, guys.
now I'm gonna go. I gotta go grab up the ISIS papers. I've seen a lot of her videos. I have not read her book yet,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I gotta
yeah,
go.
yeah. Definitely get that's a good one. She makes some very, very good points in there. Some people say some of it is off the charts, but you shrewd enough, discerning enough to pick up the stuff that makes absolute sense.
Oh, I've read some excerpts, and I've seen her talk about certain things, and I'm like, I agree with a lot of it.
Yeah,
So
yeah. She was
yeah,
a beast. She was a beast.
yeah.
Well, to wrap up this show, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. I want to tell you brothers right now that I'm honored, I'm humble, I'm appreciative to be able to share a platform with you guys today, and also to actually have a relationship with you guys in real life. It means a lot to me, to my development, to my growth, and all of the above. And I appreciate you guys for being genuine. And I want to give you your flowers right now and tell y'all that y'all are great men, and it's only greater things ahead of y'all. And for the people out there who feel like they're not worth anything or don't really have a purpose in this world, it's three things I could leave you with, but I'm gonna say two of them. If you feel like sometimes every time you try something it never works out, obstacles are not meant to derail the path. Sometimes they are the path. And second thing I always tell you is the greatest thing I've ever heard in life. Things don't have to go right. Things don't have to go as planned. But if you can see your next step, then just take that. And sometimes it's all you need in life to keep going to get you where you want to be. It's just to take your next step. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This has been the You Want to Be Real podcast. I'm your host, a man originally known as the Ruler Shaboom. That's champion mode. That's Butch. And somewhere we'll get Kai back in here.